Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And with me tonight is the old left-hander. Oh no, he's not here tonight. Ross Grimsley not here. Younger, more handsome Luke Jackson is here, managing editor of PressBox and content supervisor for PressBox. And Luke, we are going to talk about the Orioles offseason as they just about 10 days, 2 weeks away from showing up, in a lot of players starting to show up in Sarasota. All right.
Absolutely.
Not officially until like February 14th or 15th. But first, I got to tell folks out there, you can still win with PressBox and our mobile sports betting partners. That's right. Get thousands of dollars in incentives and promo offers from Barstool, Caesars, FanDuel, and more at PressBoxOnline.com/offers. That's PressBoxOnline.com/offers. And tonight we are also sponsored by Maryland Vascular Specialists. Their team of surgeons is Maryland's leaders in ethical arterial procedures. Go to mvsdoctors.com to learn more about their treatments. And of course, our friends at the Costas Inn also pay the freight here, and they're a great place to go for your dining needs, either in the restaurant or curbside. Great place for crabs, crab cakes, crab soup, and a whole host of specials Monday through Friday. Luke, we start talking a little baseball tonight, and I guess it's apropos because I guess even though the Ravens, it looks like are going to have a very interesting offseason with lots of decisions facing them, their season is over now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because they should have won that game. I think that's the bottom line, is that not only was that game there to be won, they should have won it. And it's just and I don't know what kind of chance they would have stood in Kansas City, but if you go to Kansas City, you know exactly after that game, at the very least, you know exactly where every unit stands going up against the best team in the league. And so you would have that information going into the offseason at the very least. So you had a chance to beat a division rival on the road with a backup quarterback in the playoffs, and it was there to be had. Just a couple things happened, and that was that.
And you never know, if we'd gone to Kansas City, maybe Lamar Jackson would have magically been cleared to play, or at least we might have heard from the doctors that he has not been cleared to play. But that's for another day. The Orioles offseason. Before we get into what we would call the typical offseason, out of nowhere yesterday, I had lost track of when that Major League Signing Day was on the international signings. And the Orioles had a pretty interesting day. We're not going to get into too many of the names. In fact, I only really paid attention to one name, 16-year-old from the Dominican, who's actually, Luke, as you explained to me, was from New Jersey.
Right. That's absolutely right. And I don't know the story behind why he moved back to the Dominican. He's originally from New Jersey, as you said. I think his parents are from the Dominican. They ended up moving back there. Again, I don't know the backstory of that, but it's interesting because he knows perfect English. And so he doesn't have to go through that process.
He's got one advantage over you or I. Then.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage for him to starting out his pro career. So, and he's apparently pretty advanced. He reportedly got $2.3 million from the Orioles to sign. So I would not be surprised if he speeds through the beginning part of the process, developmental wise, and skips the Dominican Academy and goes straight to Sarasota to start his professional career and can get going in the Florida Complex League in the summer. So I would not be surprised if he's accelerated a little bit on that front. So yeah, interesting story, given that he's from New Jersey originally, knows perfect English, so he might be able to get started a little bit quicker.
And let's give our viewers, his name is Luis Almeida, and he got $2.3 million, the largest international signing bonus the Orioles have ever given out. Was reading Dan Connolly's piece in The Athletic, Luke, and he makes note of the fact that the Orioles have never developed a player from Venezuela that they've signed and has gotten to the major leagues. They drafted 10 of them this year. which is really kind of a statement that they're putting their stakes in the ground. They drafted 14 Dominicans, a Cuban, and a Colombian. That comes to 26. I read that there were 27 players, so I might not have counted perfectly. But sounds like a pretty good haul. And like you say, they signed one guy they really wanted, and then took some dart throws around the dartboard.
Right, right. And it's interesting that you mentioned the Venezuela thing. They actually would have had at least one had they held on to Eduardo Rodriguez, who they
That's correct.
of Venezuela and was a projectable lefty at the time, who threw 3 different pitches for strikes. They ended up moving him for Andrew Miller, who was really helpful for the Orioles down the stretch in 2014 and in the playoffs. But Eduardo Rodriguez would have given them at least one.
Yeah.
Turned out to have a very nice career, made a lot of money for himself. And like you said, the Orioles so far to this, and we'll see as they mature more in this market how they end up going about it. But what I think will end up happening is they'll kind of stay on this course where they'll sign a couple of guys to bigger money in like the to $2.5 million range, but they're going to go for more quantity after that to give themselves, as you said, more of those dart throws. So that instead of you'll see some teams who really love a player, one of the top ranked internationals in the class, will give almost their full bonus pool to that player and ride with that. Whereas teams like the Orioles tend to like to spread that money out and give themselves more opportunities to hit on players.
It was interesting to look at the list, Luke, because there were a couple pitchers that they went to 200 grand on. Like the majority of the players were 100 granders. But then there were 2 or 3 pitchers I noticed got 200 grand. And those are names I think we might want to keep our eyes on, because it meant that they liked them a little bit more and really wanted to get the player.
And the guys that you sign don't necessarily have to be 16 years old. You look at the Houston Astros rotation. I think Christian Javier and Framber Valdez were both guys who were signed closer to 20 years old when they signed. And so it could come from all shapes and sizes down there, and you can get a lot for your money with the players that you sign down there. The guys who sign for like $10,000 end up being like all-stars. Doesn't always work out that way, but it can be a little bit random in that respect about who becomes a big star.
And I just want to point out before we get into talking about more of the true off season, that the Orioles just sent the Mets a player. And I think he's a 16-year-old that we didn't originally sign. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he might have come to us in the Cashner deal or something, where we got a couple of young Dominican players, and we sent one to the Mets, Luis De La Cruz, as the player to be named later in the James McCann deal.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the player that they sent along. Usually I get really familiar with players once they get up to Aberdeen. I get a chance to get some eyes on them, but I couldn't tell you anything.
I just recognized the name, and then I clicked on him in the MLB trade rumors link, and I kind of noticed that he was very young, and I recognized the name, and I'm pretty sure we picked him up in a deal. So you can use these guys, even guys we're developing. They can be players that are chips to move around the board to acquire what you need. Anyway, let's turn as the Orioles are less than a month away from heading out down to Sarasota, or some of the guys are probably down there already. Luke, how would you rate this off season? One in which we saw them sign Kyle Gibson. Jordan Lyles was let go, but not re-signed. The option wasn't picked up. Signed out infielder Adam Frazier, outfielder Adam Frazier. They picked up veteran Michael Givens, returned to Baltimore, and they got James McCann. There's a few other pieces, Rule 5 pitcher Andrew Politi, and there's Frankie Cordero and Darwin Hernandez and a couple others. But so far, no big name or really other than Gibson, there hasn't been a push, a hard push to get another starting pitcher.
Yeah, and apparently they're still in the market for a Michael Wacha type of starter, and apparently they've poked around on trade possibilities and things like that. But to answer your question, I would say underwhelming, but not unsurprising. I think a lot of fans wanted to see the Orioles make more of a push in the free agent market because Adley Rutschman is here, Gunnar Henderson is here, they're cheap right now. Give them help, give them real help. And I think that was the overriding opinion of the fan base, that the iron was hot, that the time to strike was now. And that really wasn't what Mike Elias and his group did. And I don't know how much money they had to spend. I just don't know. They ended up going for a lot of bounce back candidates. So Gibson is certainly a bounce back candidate in that he had a pretty solid career up until the time he got to Philadelphia, which was not a good fit for him because gave up a lot of home runs in that ballpark, number one. And number two, he's a ground ball guy. And that infield defense was not kind to him. And so I think it's a fair bet to think that get him in Camden Yards, get him with this infield defense, that he's going to bounce back. I think that's what the Orioles are certainly betting on. They're betting $10 million that that's the case.
Yep.
Adam Frazier was a pretty good ball player up until last year when his production sort of cratered, and the Orioles are betting that they can get him back to being kind of the all-star version of Adam Frazier of 2021. Michael Givens sort of had a tough go in New York back with Buck. He's been a very reliable reliever his entire career. I'm guessing that is just a blip on the radar, but it was a bad time for him going into free agency, that was the last thing on everyone's mind. You look at some of the relievers who got 2 and 3 year deals. Michael Givens is better than some of the guys who got multi-year deals.
No question of that.
And he's been a pretty reliable reliever. And I actually like that pickup because you and I had discussed this, that Tate was, we thought, a little overexposed last year. He was used a lot, and they didn't really have that extra right-handed relief arm to go after those right, left, right pockets in the middle of
it seemed like late in the year, because of the overuse of the bullpen, because the starters still are not geared back up to pre-pandemic levels. They're getting there, but it seemed like Crable and Tate and Keegan Aiken were all kind of limping to the finish line. And Felix Bautista, in fact, the last week of the season kind of,
he actually did physically limp to the finish line.
To the finish line.
But if you recall, Dylan Tate, his last outing on the last day of the season, he walked the last 3 hitters he saw, and his command all over the place. And it was sort of trending that direction the last couple of weeks of the season, where the command was just sort of eluding him. And I think you and I had mentioned that they better plan this offseason to give him a little help, and they did that. Michael Givens is a very similar reliever to Dylan Tate.
Yeah, I just was really happy. I know people wanted bigger names and the crescendo fireworks and signing a Correa or something like that. That was not in the cards, but I thought the signing of Givens was an acknowledgement of the volatility of these bullpens. And if you count on A, B, C, and D, and E doing the exact same thing next year, you're going to be sadly mistaken, because one of them is, if not more, will come up either injured or crater or something, and I think Givens is a really good low price insurance policy and gives them a lot of depth in that bullpen.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah. I think you would also agree with me, Luke, that depth in the bullpen, not just an Oriole thing, but more and more when you watch a team like the Astros, and I know Dave Dombrowski did, it was so hard to get through their bullpen in tight games and either break a tie or, they had 6 and 7 guys in each one. You're going, geez, when's this going to end? And I think Dombrowski picking up Kimbrel and then picking up these other guys last week. Who did he just pick up? The Phillies. Picked up 2 relievers last week. I forget who they were, but he picked up 2 significant relievers. He's really fortified that bullpen now with Sir Anthony Dominguez and Bilotti. He's got, and Alvarado. He's got some real length to his bullpen.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Astros. It was amazing the embarrassment of riches that Dusty Baker had to work with during the playoffs last year. He had guys with ERAs under 2 that he couldn't find a spot for in games. Right. Like he had Ryan Stanek pitching mop-up duty.
Right.
I mean, this guy would be pitched in the 8th or 9th inning for most teams, and Dusty Baker's struggling to find him work. And I believe that the Astros are bringing back that entire bullpen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
They signed up Presley, I think, a couple years ago or a year ago, and then they brought back Abreu for a big money deal. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and really, and it's a shame that it's gone this way. But starting pitching is now a 5-inning game, right? You're you're being asked to get through the lineup twice, and then anything after that's a bonus. Once that third time through the order starts, the bullpen's on call, and the manager's ready to make that move at any point after that. But particularly if his bullpen is rested and fresh, sometimes the starter has to wear it a little bit more. But yeah, you're absolutely right that's sort of how
baseball 2023 is
that's
being
just
played.
how pitching staffs are built now.
Yeah. Looking at the Orioles, one last move they made of some substance, and I thought, it's interesting that they did have to give a player to be named later, and it's a 16 or 17-year-old kid from the Dominican. But to pick up James McCann and have him only cost you out of pocket $5 million for the next 2 years, I think it's a remarkable deal for the Orioles.
We'll see. I think it's a solid deal for the Orioles because he is a guy with a quality track record. He does have a track record of working well with pitchers. Pitchers apparently like working with him.
Yep.
He has hit in the past. He had a really good free agent year. Of course, it was a 60-game year. That was, I think, his best season as a hitter. So that was a small sample size. In terms of a veteran backup, 2 years, $5 million. That's kind of what they cost. That's kind of what you would expect to give up. And he's a guy who has had some experience playing first base, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's a backup in that territory. And then he also, has somewhat of a successful track record of hitting left-handed pitching. Of course, that was an issue for the Orioles last year. For whatever reason, Rutschman didn't hit well against lefties last year. Mountcastle wasn't great against lefties last year, and Hayes wasn't great against lefties last year. It's like they really only had like one lefty masher last year, and that was Santander. So they're going to have to be better hitting against southpaws, and maybe McCann can help in that regard. Apparently, his batted ball profile was much better than his results last year. Like he hit like a $190 last year or something like it. It was not a good year for James McCann. Like no question about it. Like it was a rough go for James McCann last year, and he was a punching bag for Mets fans. And the Mets just had to clear a roster spot, and they just, for some sort of transaction, they needed to clear a roster spot, and so they basically paid him to go away. And
ironically, was it the Correa deal that he was sort of moved? Yeah, and they don't end up with Correa, but they didn't need. They signed Omar Narvaez, the catcher from
also that they're going to have Francisco Alvarez probably for, I don't know if they'll start Alvarez in the minors so he can catch most days, at least to start the year, but he's going to be around a lot more than he was this past year. So they've got a catcher coming there, and so we'll see how it goes for the Mets. Buck's going to have plenty of options,
no question about it. But Brandon Hyde's got a good option behind the plate, and it's clear. I don't think that was just a thing because it was year one. I think he intends to keep Rutschman far, far, far from being fatigued behind home plate. I think they are going to assiduously watch his innings played behind the plate. I think he's going to be like 115, 120 games behind the plate and DH 20 or 30. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, 120 might actually be a touch high. It might be more like 110 to 115. I think you're absolutely right that they want to keep his bat in the lineup as much as they can, and they don't want to overwork him behind the plate because, again, as far as we know, they hope to play in October. And you look at the Phillies. They worked JT Realmuto really hard during the season. And in the World Series, and I'm not saying that the Orioles are going to get there, but bear with me. And really during the playoffs, there wasn't enough juice left.
Yeah.
He was playing, he was a little fatigued. And so you want to make sure that your catcher has enough juice left once October rolls around.
Right. And the point I make about why I like this deal so much, it's not that he's an all-star, so to speak, but he's so much better than a Pedro Severino, a Chance Cisco, or a Robinson Chirinos. And Chirinos was perfectly adequate in the position, but it was frustrating. He had a few doubles here and there, but there weren't a lot of
He hit like a pitch.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anyway, want to talk to you about the starting rotation as we look a month away from spring training. So far, there's no sign that John Means has any setbacks, but a realistic date for him, probably June 1 to June 15th, that he could throw into major leagues. You know, maybe May 10th, May 15th, he gets a few innings down at Aberdeen and then maybe moves up, but I'd say by June 15th, he's got a chance to be a part of this team. Where do you see the rotation right now? Clearly, Kyle Gibson is at the top a little bit, at least in experience.
Yeah, right. I think Kyle Gibson is certainly the guy who has the most major league experience and most major league success as a starter. I don't think there's any question about that. Like I said, this was a pretty solid starter his entire career until he got to Philadelphia, and things kind of went sideways for him for a few reasons that we already discussed. But I think after that, you would have Dean Kramer. I think you would have Kyle Bradish, Tyler Wells, and Grayson Rodriguez. I think that those would be the four that you would mention. Then the other guys that you would that might be competing include DL Hall, who knows, he might be more of a reliever long term. I think he's got a chance to start. He's got an electric arm. Spencer Watkins, Mike Bauman,
and Austin Voth.
And so I think that you have about 9 guys maybe competing for those 4 spots outside of Gibson. I think that's probably fair. And if you want to throw Bruce Zimmerman in there, I think you can. But I think that the most likely scenario right now is that the first 4 I mentioned will be a part of the rotation, assuming they're healthy. So that's Gibson, Kramer,
Bradish,
and Tyler Wells.
You said Wells and Grayson.
And so I think that they still want to take a look at Tyler Wells as a starter. I think they believe in him as a starter.
Right.
And the big question is going to be Grayson Rodriguez's usage. Number one, will he break camp as a starter with the team? Or do they leave him behind like in Sarasota, like they did with DL Hall after he had an injury-plagued year? Or do they send him north with Norfolk, and he starts with Norfolk and he comes up as a starter around like May? Again, he only threw like 75 innings last year.
Right.
Okay. This is not a guy who's going to throw 160 innings this year in the big leagues. It's not going to happen. Okay.
Tops 110, 115.
120, right? I think that's where you're looking. And so you've got to pace him somehow. And Mike Elias has said on multiple occasions on the record that he expects and wants Grayson Rodriguez to break camp with the club in the rotation. We'll see. I'm still not totally convinced that that's going, just because of the innings, just because they're not going to hop him from 70 to 160. It's not going to happen. And so we'll see what goes on with that. And it might be that they sign a Michael Wacha, and they're your innings.
I'm still hopeful of that. Yeah.
And, they could also, trade for, I don't know how in love they are with trading prospects right now. It's still, but yeah, I think that there's still some questions, mostly about Grayson Rodriguez's role. But I will say, for Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish, and Tyler Wells, there were about 110 to 120 major league innings last year. 2023 is go time for those guys. It's time for those guys to prove that they can hold up throughout an entire major league season, make 32 starts, and give their team a chance to win every time out. It's go time for those guys. It's time for those guys to prove that they can do the job.
No question about it. No question about it. The 2 guys that are most interesting to me that you mentioned as potential starting pitchers, and one you sort of have penciled into the rotation, is Tyler Wells, and the other is DL Hall. To me, I am just staking my reputation on the fact that at the end of the day, whenever the end of the day is, those guys are relief pitchers to me. I don't think either one has shown the ability, A, to stay healthy long enough to really be counted on as starting pitchers. And I also think that a bullpen of Bautista, Tyler Wells, DL Hall, Keegan Aiken, Dylan Tate, and Michael Givens is that kind of bullpen that we were talking about that the Astros have. You know, it's long and it's got some real velocity in there and
Yeah.
people that can blow away some people.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're going into Fenway Park or Yankee Stadium or Toronto and you need to get the meat of their order out in the ninth inning, those are the kind of arms that you want to be able to turn to. You want multiple kinds of arms that can throw that kind of gas, because stuff plays. At the end of the game, stuff plays. And we saw that with Felix Bautista. We saw that with Jorge Lopez earlier in the year. So I think you could absolutely be right. I think with Wells, and that's why I mentioned that it's go time for Wells, for him to prove that he could stay healthy throughout an entire year, hold up throughout an entire year, because it's kind of now or never for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if he can't do it now, he's just going to be a reliever. Like, he's 28 years old. Like, at some point, if he can't hold up throughout the season, you're just going to put him in the bullpen.
Yep.
Whereas with DL Hall, for me, it's more like strike throwing, right? At some point, he's got to show some consistency and track record of throwing strikes to be able to start in the American League East, or else it's going to be a lot of starts where he kills the bullpen, right? And it's hard to have those throughout the course of a season. So
I look at his career, and the other day, as well, that I wrote about Darwin's and Hernandez.
Mm-hmm.
Hernandez 4 years ago was a flame-throwing prospect that was considered the number one prospect in the Red Sox organization. And because of need, he became kind of a bullpen pitcher in the big leagues. Then he would go down to the minors. They would yo-yo him up and down. It's almost a little bit like Kevin Gausman in the yo-yoing up and back. And Darwinzon Hernandez just never was allowed to just quietly build on what he was. And I see the same potential of DL Hall. And that's why I'm trying to push the Orioles to put that stake in the ground that you're going to be a relief pitcher, because I think he could be very, very, very important to a team.
Oh, and he could make a lot of
years down the road when
yeah. And so I do think that they're going to give him an opportunity to develop as a starter this year. Yep. I don't think, and at some point the arm is so electric that you don't want to waste any more bullets in the minor leagues. And if you're trying to develop him as a starter at Norfolk, and it's just, you got one good start, you got another start where he's walking everybody, and then you got, a decent start, and then another one where he's walking at some point you have to make a decision on his future. And at some point you just don't want to waste any more bullets at the minor league level. And then you just decide, okay, you're a reliever. The arm is so special that when he's on, it's remarkable when he's on.
Yeah, he's a little reminiscent too of another guy the Orioles recently had and traded to the Marlins, is Tanner Scott. I mean, he's got electric stuff, but you wonder if he can harness this. And now they picked up another pitcher who's still seductive enough to Mike Elias and staff that they think they can do something with Darwinzon Hernandez. Let's before we sign off tonight, Luke, let's take a look around the field. First base looks like Ryan Mountcastle will get a lot of rope over there at first base. And I know that the optimism is that he can really bounce back and be a more productive player day in and day out. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's I'll put my stake in the ground here that Ryan Mountcastle is going to have a much better season in 2023 results wise than he did in 2022.
Let's hope so.
His batted ball profile last year was really, really good, except for the chase. The chase rate was not good. Everything else in terms of hitting the ball hard was really good. And he should have had better results last year. The wall did hurt him, but it wasn't just the wall. It was a lot of line drives finding leather, and 162 games just wasn't enough for him for the luck to even out. And think this year the luck evens out. I think he has a big year. I think he kind of picks up where he left off in 2021 rather than 2022. I'm confident that Ryan's going to have a better year results wise than he did in 2022.
Second base, do you basically see it right now as an Arias Frazier platoon? Or do you think that Urias, I mean, not Arias, Urias, has a chance to be more the starter with Frazier being a moving piece, playing some right field, playing a little left field, playing a little, maybe even first base against tough right-handers? Or how do you see it?
The interesting thing about Urias is that he did win a Gold Glove. I thought it deservedly, I should say, won a Gold Glove. I thought he was terrific at third base. And I'll tell you who picked up on that early was Jim Palmer. When he started playing regularly at third base, I thought Urias's arm was a little short for third base, but Jim was like, no, he's terrific at third base. At one point, Jim interviewed him after a game and compared him to Brooks Robinson, and Urias's eyes light up in the whole 9 yards. But
Palmer knows a thing or two about fielders.
And Jim was right, and I think Brandon might want to mix him in at third base too.
Okay.
I think that Frazier was brought in to play a lot of second. Apparently, the Orioles told him to be prepared to play the corner outfield spots too. Maybe Frazier plays a little more right field than we think, and that leads Tondere to DH. Get him off his legs a little bit, keep him fresh throughout the season. Of course, he's had some issues staying healthy throughout the year, although he did stay healthy last year. So I think what Mike Elias did do is create a roster with some flexibility for Brandon Hyde. And I think this will be more fun for Brandon Hyde than it certainly was.
And he's ever had as an Oriole.
Yeah, because he's got actual major leaguers that he has to divvy up in terms of playing time. And so, like Jorge Mateo, Gunnar Henderson.
Who was the guy? Who was the guy that Elias picked up from Houston? That the guy couldn't play a lick. Hit a couple home runs. He was a big time prospect. What?
Rio Ruiz?
Rio Ruiz, yeah. Okay. There are no Rio Ruizes on this roster.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it starts on the infield with where you're going to play Gunnar Henderson. Yeah. Is he a full-time third baseman? Is he a full-time shortstop? Well, I tend to think that they want Mateo to play a lot of shortstop. He played a Gold Glove caliber shortstop last year. I would think that they want to continue to play him a lot there. So does that move Gunnar Henderson to third? And like you said before, does that leave, if those two guys are your third baseman and shortstop, does that leave Frazier and Urias to play a lot of second? I don't know. Now, during spring training, guys get hurt, and these things kind of tend to sort themselves
out.
And so I think this will be the most fun that Brandon's had in spring training, trying to figure out where to put. He's got a lot of qualified major leaguers now.
Yes, he does.
It took a while to raise the floor, of this organization. It took a long time because of where things started with Mike Elias, but now they've successfully raised the talent, the floor, so to speak, of the talent. And now Brandon's got a few more toys to play with.
All right. You mentioned Mateo, and we'll move along a little quicker now. Mateo, shortstop to start off with Henderson starting off at third. It really depends whether Mateo's bat plays at all.
Right. Absolutely. If the bat progresses, he'll play a lot. If the bat craters, then you got guys like Joey Ortiz behind him. Maybe Gunnar Henderson plays short. It really depends. I mean, it's hard to, even in the American League East, it's hard to even hide one guy with like a 280 on base.
Yeah.
No matter how good they are defensively. Like you got to be a little bit better with a bat than that. And hopefully he progresses with the bat. And I know there's been some speculation that the Orioles might trade a shortstop or whatever. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge if it happens. But go ahead.
Do you see one of the kids, Jordan Westberg, Norby? You mentioned probably not Ortiz yet, but Westberg or Norby, you see them contending for a job on the big league roster?
Not on opening day unless there are trades that send other guys out. I will say this, that all three of those guys you mentioned are just about ready. But maybe they need another half season at Norfolk, but they're coming. They're
coming fast.
Yeah, I saw a lot of Connor Norby at Aberdeen. His barrel to ball skills are nuts. Like, he's one of my favorite hitters in the system. Like, it's crazy how natural those barrel the ball skills. He's going to pepper the gaps at Camden Yards. Believe me, he's going to be a really good hitter. And I like Westberg too, and I like Ortiz. I mean, they've got some guys coming along quickly, and I think all of those guys will contend for playing time, assuming they stay healthy. I think all those guys will contend for playing time as the season progresses, and it'll be interesting to see if one of those guys nails down a position by the end of the year. And I think with the not going after like a long-term deal in the infield, those opportunities are wide open for those guys.
I think the outfield is really the difference in whether this team actually makes a real play to be. I think Mountcastle and the three outfielders are kind of the keys. I think we know we're going to get some good stuff out of Henderson. I think we'll get something out of Frazier. I think we're going to get stuff out of Rutschman, of course, and Mateo will do his thing, or Urias will play a lot more. And I feel comfortable with what I'm going to get. It's the outfielders that leave me just wanting more. Your thoughts?
Yeah. So Cedric Mullins had a nice year last year, not quite as good as 2021. You wouldn't expect him to duplicate 2021 because that would just be hard to do. He's got to hit better against lefties. He's got to give Brandon a reason to keep him in there against lefties. Because last year, again, like really the last couple of months, Brandon started platooning him and playing a lot of Ryan McKenna against lefties. And so I think that Cedric will probably get another opportunity to show that he can be a full-time player. And even if he's not, he's still a pretty damn good player. But if he wants to be that full-time everyday guy, he's got to hit better against lefties than he did this past year. Austin Hayes had a really good first half, really solid first half, looked like an all-star candidate. Second half was not good. The at-bats were not good.
How much were those injuries a part of that, though? They get hit, incessantly getting hit on his hands.
And I know the one thing that was brought up a lot was that diving catch he made in Chicago on the hard warning track they have there. Yeah. Apparently he got banged up from that, but that's part of being a ball player, right?
Yep.
That you fight through some things. If you're going to play every day, you're going to have to fight through some things and still remain productive. And that's been kind of a bugaboo for Hayes. And credit to him for battling through those things last year and staying on the field, making himself an option for Brandon Hyde. But that part of the developing as a major league everyday player is remaining productive throughout the bumps and the bruises. And so that's the next step for him.
All right. And Santander will get decent play from.
Yeah, he'll probably play about half his time in right, half his time at DH. Productive player. He's a good hitter.
He's a good hitter. Good hitter. Luke, thanks for doing this. You and I are going to take the place of Glenn Clark and I on Thursday. I think we're going to do some NFL picks.
Oh, okay.
You up for that?
I'll give you some winners. I will. Right. Winners.
I don't think I had a pretty good week this week, but I don't know. I got to go back over my sheet. Hey, you can win big with PressBox and our mobile sports betting partners. Get thousands of dollars in incentives and promo offers from Barstool, Caesars, FanDuel, and more at PressBoxOnline.com/offers. That's PressBoxOnline.com/offers. And we are proudly sponsored by Maryland Vascular Specialists. Their team of surgeons is Maryland leader in ethical arterial procedures. Go to mvsdoctors.com to learn more about their treatments. And of course, we always thank our friends Costas Inn. Luke, thanks a lot for joining me. And all of you out there, Gary Stein and I will be back with some guest on Thursday. Not sure who yet, but we'll do it. And Luke and I will be back making some NFL picks on Thursday. Talk soon. Bye.